All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk some economics after the revolution. Now, following the revolution, there were some states, some individuals that economically did perfectly fine, others not so much. Now, following the revolution, land which had been owned by loyalists, okay, land that had been held by Tories, was seized. Now, this meant that if you had remained loyal to the crown during the revolution, now that everything was over and done with, you could still lose all your stuff. However, the good news was that even though you did have people having their land seized from them, no heads were being chopped off, okay? Now think about the French Revolution a few years later. Think about the way they killed off the aristocrats and then turned on one another. The American Revolution was not one like that. It was a more conservative revolution. We wanted to secure our rights, but we weren't in it to kill everybody. Okay, so well, if you had been a loyalist, you were probably going to lose a lot of your stuff. You at least knew you were going to get to keep your head. Now, one of the problems faced was that goods, things that we had always bought from England, were now cut off. And that forced us to make our own. Remember, Britain had wanted to keep us in a sort of subservient economic adolescence where we could provide the raw goods necessary to build all sorts of things, but we didn't have the infrastructure necessary to actually create the finished goods. As such, everything we purchased pretty much was going to have to come from England. Well, now that that spigot was closed, we had to go through and we had to figure out how we were going to do this on our own. So we do start to see the beginnings of American industrialization. Now, some of this had started earlier on during colonial times, but really just sort of at very low levels. Now you're going to start to see it really blossom because quite literally it was a need. We no longer had resources that we did as part of the British Empire, and we had to figure it out all on our own. So even though we are starting to see some industrialization going on, America is going to remain predominantly agricultural to a large degree. In fact, we're going to stay that way right up through the American Civil War. It's not going to be till after the Civil War we start moving to the cities. So you are going to start to see some industrialization starting, but the large scale industrialization is going to come later. Right now, we're pretty much looking at just building those things that it was absolutely necessary that we create for ourselves. As time progressed, we would start to expand our industrial base, but that was going to take some time. Okay. Before the war, we had great trade with Britain. Okay, we did have a very good trading relationship with them. Okay, now we don't. But we also now have the ability to trade with anyone we wished. We could trade with foreign countries. Now, this privilege had not existed before. Remember, everything had to go through England before that. You had the navigation laws, which were designed to try and prevent, Dutch shippers from being able to transport American goods. And now we could do essentially whatever we wanted. We had the ability to go through and actually trade with any nation in the world that was willing to trade with us. Now, this is something we had longed for. This is something that we had argued was a right we should have. And now that the revolution has ended, now that we are our own nation, we no longer have that good trade with Britain, but we do have the ability to trade with other nations. That is going to be a major benefit. You had Yankee shippers, okay, ships like the Empress of China, 1784, boldly ventured into far off places. This was a start for us. Before this, everything, like I said, had to go through Britain. We had to make sure that our policies aligned with what Britain wanted. We had to make sure that all of our shipping went through Britain first. Well, now we could do whatever we wanted. We could go to wherever we wanted to go to try and strike some kind of a trade deal. Now, this is going to be of great value to a number of people because for the first time, really, you're going to be able to risk your capital, your money, and really see the possibility of some great rewards coming in. So you do have those entrepreneurs that are willing to take a gamble, that they are willing to risk what they have in order to get an even better return. Problem is, while all this is going on, and while it seems like we have some good stuff happening, we also have the issue of inflation. Okay, the money we had as a country was becoming it was getting to be worth less and less every single day. You can think back to world history, and you can think about pictures from Germany between the wars. We have people bringing in stacks of 50,000 mark bills and things like that. Same kind of thing here. We did have paper money, we did have currency, but unfortunately, it is losing its value rather quickly. Okay, we also have taxes now. Now we're going to have to pay those taxes because it's no longer no taxation without representation. Now we are the government, and as such, our decisions are binding upon us. But it didn't matter, we still hated the taxes. It is sort of an American aspect of life. We seem to always have hated taxes, and for the most part, I am fairly confident people will continue to hate them into the future. A number of wealthy had become poor. The people who had become wealthy, who had become rich during this time frame, were looked upon with suspicion. The disrespect of private property became shocking. And you think about it, private property is the stuff that you own. It is your stuff. And we were reaching a point where there was no respect for that private property. The fact that it was yours didn't seem to matter that much. People were not respecting private property rights. And with that started to come more and more chaos. So you put these together, inflation, taxes, lack of property rights, and you have essentially a perfect storm brewing. And the concern was whether or not this was going to lead to some kind of